once you land a particular customer, you immediately got to start looking for lookalikes, because when you go to those lookalikes, they know that they're not the first ones. They're not the sacrificial lamb that you're trying with. And so that's important. The focus matters. The lookalikes, finding the lookalikes matters. And the other part is you just never want to let a customer down. And we sell boring infrastructure, but we take pride in the fact that as more AI applications are formed, the undeniable truths, the axioms that are always going to be true. People are going to want more interactivity, and that interactivity has to be fueled by the latest data, so real-time data, and they want it fast. It's never going to change. And the theme of products that we help build allow folks to get more interactive applications based on real-time data and make them faster. That's why we do caching and messaging. It's the bread and butter of interactive, low latency applications. One thing I learned about myself is that I'm pretty impatient.
What was it like to work at NASA?
I worked on the NASA supercomputer as well, and we had a demo that showed Amazon had released spot instances. You could run for about $100 an hour. You could run a top 500 supercomputer. A lot of fun just working on AWS in the early days and taking the state-of-the-art technology and bringing it to space exploration.
You did image processing for Mars rover. You drove communications for interplanetary missions. Then you worked at Amazon.
I had it in my heart to just be a part of startups one day, and Amazon purchased a video encoding company called Elemental Technologies, and I didn't know anything about video, but I really wanted to be there. So
crazy because 2013 is where I think I started observing. That was my first job in the US and observing AWS and Amazon closely. And then we used to think that it's already a $100 billion company. And I think yesterday it's like a $2 trillion company. All you had to do the last 10 years was just buy Amazon, Microsoft, or basically all the three clouds, and you would exceed every expectation.
About 15 years ago, Werner Vogel said something really controversial where people were saying, is AWS just a hobby project for Amazon? And he said, one day AWS will be bigger than the retail business. And people were just like, okay, this is just posturing. That's never going to happen. But the one thing about Amazon leaders is, they really believe in the think big leadership principle. And the leadership principle just says, thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Nataraj is the host of Startup Project podcast. He is an investor at Incisive VC, an angel investor, and a product manager. All opinions expressed by Nataraj and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of the firms they work with. This podcast is informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Nataraj and guests may maintain positions in the companies or securities discussed on this podcast. To learn more, visit thestartupproject.io.
Hey Khawaja, welcome to the Startup Project podcast.
Hey Nataraj, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Excited to be here.
So for audience, I'll set a little bit of context, about you. And I was going through your profile, and you have a pretty, interesting career till now. You worked at NASA. You did image processing for Mars rover. You drove communications for interplanetary missions. Then you worked at Amazon in AWS. Worked on DynamoDB, SimpleDB, which powered Amazon Retail, Amazon Video, and then you were head of AWS Elemental. I know you're building Momento, which is a serverless cache, low latency messaging service, and soon to be launched or already launched durable storage service. And you also closed Series A led by Bain Capital, $15 million. So yeah, you've done a lot of stuff, and congratulations on Series A. I guess to start with, what was it like to work at NASA?
Oh, it was great. I started NASA as, while I was still in college, and it was great to be surrounded by incredibly smart people who were, more so than smart, they were very passionate about what it was that they were working on, this endeavor to further human reach and explore places that we have never seen before. It's a pretty inspirational mission. And I saw firsthand what you can accomplish if all you really care about is, that passion, that mission that you're on. A lot of the distractions, team dynamics, politics, all of that kind of disappear when everybody is unified and chasing that one mission. And I really enjoyed that working at JPL, at NASA
And
JPL.
can you talk about the projects that you were involved in while there?
Yeah, so I started working on the cameras on board the Mars rovers. I started as as more of on the hardware side. And one thing I learned about myself is that I'm pretty impatient, and impatience is a virtue, I guess, as far as I'm concerned. But um, I found that software engineering had a much better velocity with which you see the results of what you're working on, and you can iterate faster, and you're not, and you can see the results of your labor come to life quicker. So I shifted over to the image processing side. And image processing for Mars has a lot of interesting challenges. Data is coming down from Mars, and what you want to do is to paint all of the relevant images next to each other so that scientists can see a 360-degree panorama around, what's going on around the rover. You want to overlay satellite imagery that's been captured alongside the terrestrial imagery that's been taken by the rover. And
Were you also impatient because it takes a lot of time to get images from Mars, right?
exactly, it does take a lot of time to get images from Mars, but it was taking longer to process the images. And because we were generating multi-gigapixel panoramas in as quickly as we could. As soon as the data comes in, people want to look at it. And that's when I decided to punch in my personal credit card, and I went in and became a customer of AWS, Amazon Web Services, to see if I can get these panoramas to be generating a lot faster. And so I got to work on that. I moved our entire image processing pipeline onto AWS, took advantage of the elasticity. There weren't a lot of services in AWS back then. This is back in like 2008, 2009 timeframe. This is pre-EBS. We had EC2, S3, and SQS is all we had access to, and got to deploy that. And it was a lot of fun just working on AWS in the early days and taking the state-of-the-art technology and bringing it to space exploration.
Does it involve a lot of process at NASA to get yourself reimbursed for your personal credit card?
Oh, yeah. So I started prototyping on public datasets, and I don't think I ever got reimbursed for the initial credit cards that I spent. I got reimbursed in, I think I feel like I became a better engineer, and I learned a lot, and that was totally worth it. But onboarding Amazon as a vendor back in 2008, 2009 timeframe, like late 2008 timeframe, was hard because, there was commentary like, what does a bookstore need to know about running infrastructure? Like they don't know what it's like to run data centers, and or maybe they, can they actually do stuff securely? Like, can they live up to our standards? And so it took a lot of effort to qualify them and to make sure that they are compliant to all the regulations that we had to comply to. But after that point, JPL was able to just the NASA center I worked at, we were able to just pay for the AWS usage via the PO, and then I could take my credit card off, and I could afford to pay for all of the image processing needs that we had, but it was good enough to do prototype work.
And that made you join Amazon because of, did you see like the potential, or it was just another job opportunity?
Yeah, I joined NASA because I like to have a positive impact of what I'm doing, and I thought that the extending the human reach was a pretty novel endeavor to take humanity to where humans can't go. Because NASA JPL, the center I worked at, they are the premier NASA center for robotics exploration of the solar system and going to places where humans just can't go. The furthest spacecraft they operate is Voyager. It's beyond the edge of the solar system now. And I thought this was a very profound mission. And the more I worked with the leaders at Amazon and the engineers at Amazon, the more I realized that this is the beginning of something really magical. Cloud computing at the time was commoditizing infrastructure to make it available for experimentation. And it's the same thing. Like the way I was going and putting my credit cards in, I felt that startups are going to be able to run a lot faster because they can just punch in their credit cards and experiment without the physical barriers of buying infrastructure. I had a demo where I was showing that, I worked on the NASA supercomputer as well. And, we had a demo that showed Amazon had released spot instances. You could run for about $100 an hour. You could run a top 500 supercomputer. And I did the benchmark to validate that. So I was inspired by the profound impact AWS is going to have on the GDP of the world's innovation by enabling more experimentation. I wanted to be a part of that mission. And I wanted to, bring those benefits and be a part of the journey that brings it and do my little part that I could. And that's why I got inspired and joined Amazon.
Amazon is a particularly unique place from, what I know. I have a lot of friends who work at Amazon because I'm, Seattle based. What was your experience of working at Amazon, like those early days to, when you came out of Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined Amazon, it was 2013, and it was still early days of Amazon compared to where Amazon is today. Amazon was a much smaller company. The market cap was, a tenth or so of what it is today. And the employee count was smaller. And what I really liked about Amazon at the time was it had the same kind of missionary mentality of people really passionate about achieving a particular goal and working hard to kind of deliver on it. It was still a smaller company. There wasn't any bureaucracy or anything like that. You have an idea, you just go get it done. And the level of ownership was through the roof. And I really enjoyed that. It felt very much like the same passion that people had at NASA. And there was this very unique feeling of customer obsession. And 2013 was a really nice time to be at Amazon, in particular in the AWS division of Amazon, right? The AWS was tiny back then. And the customer obsession was really nice because people would put themselves in the shoes of the customers, and you would get to go work with all kinds of customers around the globe and understand problems in a completely foreign domain that you have no idea about and help them solve deeply technical problems via using the AWS infrastructure. So I had a lot of fun, and I felt, incredibly productive in terms of the contributions I was able to make to the world in my small ways by being a part of AWS in those days.
Which teams did you join and which products did you work on while being at Amazon?
Yeah, so I joined as the technical assistant to Charlie Bell. Charlie ran, basically product and engineering for AWS at the time. And technical assistant is basically a chief of staff role. It has the title is technical assistant, but you're the chief of staff. It's the same role that Andy Jassy had to Jeff Bezos at one point. And it's a role typically reserved for somebody who's been tenured at Amazon for a while. But I got lucky. I was able to get that role as my first job at Amazon. And it was nice because I got to learn how AWS was scaling. And I got to be in the same meeting rooms as the core AWS leaders for 6 to 8 hours a day for the first 15 months I was at Amazon. And it was like the best MBA program that you can get access to because, I just got to absorb. I didn't know anything about running a business or making money off of infrastructure. I'm still learning, but I was able to absorb a lot while being there and just watching the way Andy and Charlie were operating. Subsequent to that, I ran, it's a rotational role. You're supposed to go in, learn, and go, you know, repay Amazon the benefits of all of which you've learned by taking an operational role. So I was appointed to run DynamoDB, which is a large NoSQL database, and I did that for a bit, and then Amazon purchased. I had it in my heart to just be a part of like startups one day, and Amazon purchased a video encoding company called Elemental Technologies, and I didn't know anything about video, but I really wanted to be there, so I went in as the person who was supposed to do the integration work, like everything from getting their Wi-Fi set up to getting everybody an Amazon username and password and all of that. So that's the kind of hands-on, roles that are available at Amazon. And in the process, I fell in love with the people that were there, the energy in the startup of Elemental, the passion that people had. And this was a company that got acquired, and we were supposed to just go and build a bunch of AWS services on the technology that Elemental had. So I stayed back after the integration was done and took on the role to run product and engineering for Elemental, and shipped 6 different AWS media services. And so the long and short of it, I ran Dynamo, and then I ran product and engineering for all of the media services for AWS.
It's crazy because 2013 is where I think I started observing. That was my first job in the US, and observing AWS and Amazon closely. And then we used to think that it's already $100 billion company. And I think yesterday it's like a $2 trillion company. All you had to do in the last 10 years was just buy Amazon, Microsoft, or basically all the 3 clouds, and you would exceed every expectation. Have you been surprised by the scale of the cloud in general? Like, did it even surpass your expectations? Or when you were in those early rooms with Andy Jassy, were you sort of expecting this kind of growth?
I, about 15 years ago, Werner Vogel said something really controversial, where people were saying, is AWS just a hobby project for Amazon? And he said, one day AWS will be bigger than the retail business. And people were just like, okay, this is just posturing. That's never going to happen. But the one thing about Amazon leaders is, they really believe in the think big leadership principle. And the leadership principle just says, thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I was along for the ride, but the leaders at AWS always had the North Star in mind to be as big as they are today. And they're relentless. They're never going to be happy with the level of impact they've made on the world by where they are today. They're already thinking, how do we grow this an order of magnitude again? And that's the really exciting part of being a part of a company like that. I didn't have expectations of how small or large the Amazon growth would be. I was just enjoying the ride of working alongside some of the largest consumers of infrastructure, convincing them to move to AWS, and seeing the business benefits that they were getting by running on the cloud, and how productive their teams were as a result of it. So I every step of the way, the product market fit got validated, and the AWS teams just kept adding capabilities. So yeah, I don't know if I could genuinely say that I thought Amazon was going to get as big as it is today, but I had a lot of fun watching it happen.
So at some point you decided, you had enough experience with Amazon and started Momento. So what was the triggering point, and did you see an opportunity for building a cache, or because I mean AWS, when I compare AWS, and I'm mostly in the Azure world as a user and a builder, AWS has more products than I think any other cloud. Like they churn out products left and right, and I think they have scaled back a bit. And I've seen caches also of a lot of different kind, right? front-end cache, back-end cache, key value pair cache. There's so many products out there. So what was the triggering point to say that, there's a gap in the market that you are trying to address with Momento? So what was that journey like?
Yeah, so my co-founder Daniela and I, we both come from the Dynamo team. And one of the things that we really about Dynamo was if you need to do 10 million transactions per second, you don't have to learn what instance type, the number of shards, the number of replicas. A lot of the knobs that you have to deal with a traditional database, they just kind of go away with Dynamo. And that experience did not exist with any of the caching solutions. All of the caching solutions that we have or had in AWS, they were leaky abstractions, and they exposed a lot of the knobs to the end user. So we started by saying, hey, Momento will help collapse a bunch of the diagrams, a bunch of the boxes in your architectural diagram of your caching deployment into a single, SaaS endpoint. And, it doesn't really matter if you're doing 10 TPS or 10 million TPS. We take care of, making the best underlying decision on the infra side to get you what you need and to keep you productive. What we realized along the way, and we literally did this accidentally, is, we built a 2-tier caching system, and the second tier ended up being a really great web server. And this means that now we're not only collapsing a bunch of the boxes in the caching side into one, we have the fine grained access control plus the HTTP server and a cache, so that, like mobile devices can talk directly to Momento. And again, that just comes down to developer productivity, right? If you want to build like a chat system with 4 million subscribers without having to deal with WebSockets or having to deal with, membership management and, writing a bunch of code, you just write a bunch of client code and a token vending machine, and boom, you're off to the races. Everything scales behind. And nothing like that exists today, and it certainly didn't exist back then. AWS is great for providing incredible building blocks, and all we had to do was to compose the best set of building blocks available to solve this particular use case around enabling developers to build highly interactive applications.
So this idea that, a different abstraction level is necessary, was that an insight, talking to a lot of DynamoDB customers, or how did you get to that sort of maybe hypothesis that, customers need this?
Yeah, there were two things. One was, we at the Elemental side, we were some of the largest caching consumers because we built, one of the services my team built was Media Tailor. Media Tailor is a personalized ad insertion service. It inserts personalized ads when millions of people are watching Thursday Night Football on Prime TV. Like, this is a service that's injecting personalized ads. And you can imagine this is a very high throughput system. And as a result, we became one of the largest customers for, the caching services at AWS. And that's when a lot of us, looked at it and said, I really wish this was less painful. I really wish I didn't have to deal with the instance types, the number of shards, the replicas, the maintenance windows. I wish all of that just didn't exist. That was one piece. And then we also learned, we realized that we were learning a whole bunch of operational lessons, one outage at a time. And then we also realized that it's the same lessons that every other team at Amazon was learning, because Amazon has that operational metrics meeting. And we realized that caching is a really common place where people get in trouble. And it's the same set of things. And we can productize those, like little things like tuning your clients, having the right, exponential backoffs, timeouts, retries, managing capacity, having enough capacity available to you, optimizing the capacity, making sure that you're not just overutilized, heat management, dealing with hotkeys. All of these things are, outages that happen, and then teams have to go fix and re-architect. And we figured we could productize that. And that's our contribution to humanity, is to, let the developers that are building interactive experiences focus on their differentiating aspects instead of worrying about the number of shards in their backend cache.
So you sort of identified this hypothesis that this is a problem, and you want to sort of create a solution for that. What was that initial process of going from 0 to 1? How did you hire your team? You talked about your co-founder. Talk to me a little bit about that 0 to 1 phase where you're hiring, where you're building that MVP, sort of that journey.
Yeah, so Danielle and I firmly believe in hiring ourselves. Like this is the craftsmanship of building your own team is incredibly important to us. We take a vested interest in every single employee, especially in the early days of the startup. So almost like pretty much all the hiring at the company, and certainly all the hiring on the engineering and product side, has been done by us together, as opposed to it being outsourced or being a problem of a recruiter inside of the company. And the people matter. The people matter a lot. And if you have the right team and that team has the right passion, you can accomplish anything. Then the second order bit is, well, what is the thing that you want to accomplish? And we knew that, this is a large enough market, but whatever we build has to be grounded by customers. So then we started approaching customers for design partners. We started having some hypotheses around, hey, this particular customer is running at scale and we anticipate them having these kinds of problems. And what we were looking for is not somebody to write us a check. It's somebody who's willing to be a design partner, somebody who's willing to share with us what are the infrastructure challenges they're having with their caches. Let us experiment. They have to be early movers. And get us feedback on our product when running at scale. And that process was very gratifying because the team of passionate individuals that we hired took this responsibility of a design partner very seriously. And they built a culture of operational excellence and this culture of not letting a customer down because we are in their mission critical path. And as a result, we found our first few customers and in some cases, we got them out of something that was having constant outages. And in some cases, we helped them with their product launches and with unanticipated scales and so forth. But every step of the way, I think our customers have not only loved the product, but they've loved working with the team and the level of ownership that the Momento team has in their success, not just the revenue that the company is generating. So that was the 0 to 1. You hire the people. Then you find the customers who can be your strategic partners and can give you the product grounding that you need. You make them successful. And now we're at a stage where we have a bunch of these customers, design partners that have been successful, and we're now figuring out how to double down on our go-to-market strategy and get our product into more hands and get more, even more real-world traction for our services.
Are there any specific type of customers that were looking, like when you talk about design partners, like are these video streaming companies or are these companies like building lots of chat applications? What type of companies were interested in the solution?
Yeah, this is something I did pretty badly at first. So I used to go around telling my team, like we're building a cache. A cache it's like selling a water bottle. Every vertical, every customer needs a cache. And what that led to was a pretty broad go-to-market motion in terms of which customers to go after. But we realized that we don't have the luxuries of a larger company. There's very few of us, and we need to specialize at first. We can't over-specialize to a point where we're on a particular vertical, but we need to provide, exert concerted efforts towards a specific set of verticals so that we can recycle the messaging and find lookalikes and so forth. So the core verticals where we do really well are media entertainment, so like video streaming, like you said, but not just the actual streaming part. Like video companies have, they have identity management, like how do you log in to your box for DirecTV? What movies do you have access to watch? That's called entitlement. What CDR workflows need to be, recording at 8 o'clock and at 8:30 o'clock? That's there's lots of spikes there. So, and then each of these companies have, lots of mobile applications to make the experience more interactive. So we found our niche and we found a bunch of really happy customers, like large media customers. And the second niche was gaming. Same thing. So we identified our core power for Momento comes when you have like unprecedented, unanticipatable scale and like spiky traffic. That's what we do really well. And media, gaming, and then fintech, and specifically in the areas of like fraud detection, payment processing, like those spikes, we absorb really, really well. So going back to our core ICP, it's, spiky workloads, unanticipated traffic. And there's one other part, which is if there's an outage, it really hurts. Like it has a financial impact on the company. So that's how we identify now the next generation of design partners that we look for. They have to have large scale, unanticipated spikes and mission criticality.
Got it. I mean, at how many customers did you feel like, you were good enough and okay, we really have a product market fit, or are you still think that we are still figuring out product market fit?
No, I think, we have dozens of customers that are in the, that we consider as like large enterprise customers. And there's coherence in their asks, right? Like we had to add a whole bunch of features that we never thought we would. Like we had to add data structures. We thought, most users are using key value, but people do like using data structures in their caches. So, but it wasn't like a one-off thing. It's not one customer asking for a particular item. So the fact that there's coherence across the dozens of customers that we work with in our early stage gave us assurance that there's product market fit. And then it's about, creating that roadmap and prioritizing it based on what the customers are asking for. But it's also about curating the go-to-market messaging and the go-to-market efforts to find more customers that kind of fit these verticals and the ICP description that I mentioned as well.
Talk to me a little bit about, how are you thinking about marketing in your context or growth in your context? Because B2B growth is likely, I would say, less talked about, and how you approach is very nuanced. And it's also very hard. Like B2C is pretty straightforward, you can buy Google ads, Facebook ads, and you can go in front of a lot of customers and find the right customer set that, would consume you. But B2B is slightly a much more complicated game when it comes to startups. Talk to me a little bit about, what you've learned in terms of like growth and marketing, and how are you thinking about it right now?
Yeah, and I'm still, we're very early, so I don't know if I've learned everything I need to know by any means. But one thing I learned is the focus really matters. And, given that we have some of the largest names in media and gaming already using us, it became a lot easier for us to say, hey, this is who we're going to focus on. And, one of my mentors, advisors, Shruti from Rockset, Shruti Bhatt, she shares that, once you land a particular customer, you immediately got to start looking for lookalikes. Because when you go to those lookalikes, they know that they're not the first ones. They're not the sacrificial lamb that you're trying with. And so that's important. The focus matters. The lookalikes, finding the lookalikes matters. And the other part is you just never want to let a customer down. And in our case, operational excellence and having the architecture behind ourselves to not cut corners and actually be ready for unanticipated scale is really crucial. Because when you do that, then the existing customers, where the customers for whom you're finding lookalikes, they become references and they become your advocates. So don't let customers down, like have that real obsession, focus on a few, key verticals, and really listen to the customers to create a coherent roadmap. And sometimes you have to tell the customers, no, that's not what we do. But in some cases, you have to disconfirm your beliefs and, see patterns that are emerging as you're talking to customers to ground the product that you're building.
I want to slightly shift gears and ask about this one thing that I sort of skipped asking you about, working at Amazon. What's your take on, I think Amazon at this point has 16 principles, um, and the way you work using those principles, um, or like the philosophy of using those principles sort of to drive culture, and like, and do you take that in your current company? Do you have your own set of principles, or how do you look at the whole principles thing at Amazon?
I think the leadership principles at any company are a really good reflection of what the culture is in the company, depending on how well they're embraced. I'm a fan of the Amazon leadership principles, but I also recognize that Momento has to define its own culture in its own unique ways. We have the opportunity to start with a clean sheet of paper, and we don't have to copy the culture from any one company. So we didn't copy the Amazon leadership principles wholesale. We have customer centricity as one of our core leadership values, and psychological safety for everybody, and that inclusivity is core part of our culture. Um, but Amazon has similar values. They're just in a different format. We're also too small to have 16 values. Like we just can't. Um, Most Amazon leadership principles, and I think it's because there's so many of them, are grossly misunderstood as well, even by people at Amazon. So I'll give you a concrete example of a commonly misunderstood one. There's a leadership principle that says leaders are right a lot. And, people think that's about, leaders with good intuition. And the nuances get missed. Like, they're right a lot. They're not always right. And if you read the actual description, it says leaders work to disconfirm their beliefs. They are attempting to disconfirm their beliefs, and they're willing to be wrong to be right, right? Like, which means that you don't indulge in self-consistency. You're willing to look at data and say, you know what? I thought about this wrongly, and I have changed my perspective on it. It's not about you're the leader, so you're going to be right always. But when you have so many, nuances get lost, especially when you have, hundreds of thousands of employees. So Momento has its own, set of leadership values, and we'll keep adding some. But right now, it's about customer centricity and psychological safety for everybody.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I felt that Amazon did it a little bit. Um, I think Bezos added two more principles while he was leaving Amazon, which I thought was a little bit over the top. I think you had already 14 principles. I think it's just that I don't feel that it was productive to add two more principles into the existing set of 14 principles. Um, because how many principles can really people follow, right? Like have the nuance to pick what and when. And I've also seen this pattern of like people who stay for long at Amazon know on how to use the principles to sort of reinforce their point, which sort of is completely opposite of the whole purpose of the principle itself. Um, which means that anything can be justified in the name of principles. So the original whole point of having principles is now really moot because you can say anything and you can apply the principles because you're really good at applying principles, not really actually using them. So that's what I felt when they added like two more principles on top of the existing principles. Um, but yeah, it's a very interesting culture for sure, and I think it has worked really well when applied correctly. Um, any other interesting lessons that you learned from seeing now three different cultures? Like you worked at NASA, it's completely different set of factors at play. Amazon, completely different set, and now you're seeing as you've integrated a startup and now you're creating a startup. Do you think there's differences on how you poach or like create talent and because I'm focused more on like how do you convince people, especially in a startup, right? You have to convince people that this is an important problem where you're spending, significant amount of time to solve your life's time, and it is a worthy time to spend on, right? So I always feel like in startups that is one of the biggest challenges, is to convince great people to come and join you to work on this problem. And it only happens when you can like really create a culture where you can attract really high talented individuals. So yeah, that's sort of like my motivation to ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is so large and the US government is so large that it's really hard to make a generalized statement about which culture might be better or not. Like, cultures vary. Like, you go to some cities, you can see like street by street, different neighborhoods have a completely different landscaping norm or whatever it might be. And the same is true for Amazon. You can have teams within the same organization that are horrible, and you can have teams in the same organization that are actually really, really good. And that's just, it's law of large numbers. So you're going to have terrible teams, you're going to have great teams. And if you're considering a role in any of these companies, any of these environments, it is really important to make a bet on the people on your team. Even if you're joining as an IC, you're making a bet on the team that you're in, the product that you're working on, and the team you're in. And this is true inside of Amazon as much as it is true joining a startup. You should go spend your time working with people that you enjoy working with and working on a problem that you believe will leave a profound impact when you're done with it. And that's how you should pick a team inside of Amazon or Microsoft or at Google or at, take the thousands of startups that exist. Find the people that you want to work with and find the problem that you think will have a profound impact, and you'll feel very fulfilled doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Like whenever someone asks me a question about, broadly about the company I'm working at, and I always say it depends on the 5 to 10 people that you're working with. Everything else is, it's generalized, right? You don't know like 5 teams away how the things are. You don't know how things are between urges and team. It's all about like 10 people that you work with closely and everyone else on the periphery. Um, so we're almost at the end of our conversation, and I ask a couple of questions to all my guests. So one of the question is, what are you consuming these days? What is your, uh, books or podcasts or, I don't know, Netflix? What is defining your consumption these days?
On the books, huge fan of I think it's Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Um, if you want to learn to be a good product manager, it's not a product management book, but I found that to be a pretty insightful book. On the podcasts, we've been creating a new community for Momento, and as part of Momento, we've been creating a community around serverless computing. So there is, there's a community-led effort, but there's like 3 or 4 different podcasts every week now. I can't even keep up with them. We started this and now it's taken a life of its own, but I always find very interesting podcasts on, if you go to believinserverless.com. I also follow Software Huddle, Alex Debris, on the podcast front. Netflix, I don't think I have anything in particular exciting there right now. I feel like I'm done watching TV for a bit.
Who are your mentors? Like who helped you in your career, be it Amazon or now at Momento or, otherwise?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with a lot of people that I respect. So at Momento, we have some great mentors and angels that have invested in us. And we come to them for advice, and you'd be surprised how much free advice you can get from people. And all you have to do is stay in touch and just ask. So Amazon has been the best alumni club that I could have ever been a part of. And So you just stay in touch with your senior leaders and you advise. And I stay in touch with the people that I've admired and I model my work after. And they never say no. Sometimes they'll say, not this month, but I'll make time next month. But that's like all you have to do is ask. And I have a variety of people that I work with, and I make it a point to learn from lots of people, depending on the particular situation that I'm running into as well.
What do you know about being a founder that you wish you know when you're starting Momento?
Focus matters a lot. You can't especially for somebody like me, as well as Daniela, we had never started a company before. We're both first-time founders. And we want to think big. We want to take over the world and, do incredible feats. But you have to recognize that we are a small company, and the focused effort on everything from engineering to GTM just makes such a huge difference. We are just now doubling down on our media and gaming story. This is over the past 6 months or so. And that's something I wish we started 2 years ago. And, it helps a lot. And when your whole team is focused, it's easier. It's, when you have a large team, we don't have a very large company. There's only 30 of us. But when you're focusing on a few small things, it's easier to get the whole team to focus as opposed to chasing, 15 different initiatives. So to get the whole team to, we like to say become the rowing team where everybody is rowing in cadence and is synchronized. Focusing on a few important, big hairy goals. That's the key. And I wish I feel like I always knew that in the back of my head, but I never appreciated how important that is.
I think one last question. What do you think about what's happening in AI? And are you using AI in your company, not building for AI, but just as being more productive or just leveraging it to write better code? Yeah, just what do you think about what's happening with AI?
I think AI is great. I think it's creating a whole sorts of new applications, and it's going to further what humans can do. Steve Jobs had this famous saying where, if you measure the effectivity of a human in terms of calories consumed per mile you walk, humans versus animals, we're like bottom of the rung. We're terrible. It's the condor that has exerts the least amount of energy per mile traveled. Well, you put a human on a bicycle and we are incredibly more efficient. And his thing was that with the right tool, humans are incredible. And AI is that right tool. It's not the end all and be all for us, but I am fascinated by the productivity boost that AI has. Now, Momento, it's not very fashionable, but we're not necessarily an AI company. We sell boring infrastructure, but we take pride in the fact that as more AI applications are formed, the undeniable truths, the axioms that are always going to be true. People are going to want more interactivity, and that interactivity has to be fueled by the latest data, so real-time data, and they want it fast. It's never going to change. And the theme of products that we help build allow folks to get more interactive applications based on real-time data and make them faster. That's why we do caching and messaging. It's the bread and butter of interactive, low latency applications.
I think that's a good, note to end the podcast on. Thanks, Roger. Thanks for coming on the show, and good luck on all things that you're building at Momento.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.